I am Niccolò Machiavelli, and I will reveal to you a truth so cold, so unflinching, that it will unsettle every illusion you hold about power, freedom, and control. Throughout history, rulers, kings, priests, and manipulators of every kind have attempted to bend men to their will. They promised obedience, demanded loyalty, and threatened punishment. Yet the reality remains this: no one, not even the most ruthless tyrant, can fully control you unless you grant them permission. They tell you that power is absolute, that once someone gains authority over you, your fate is sealed. They want you to believe that control is unbreakable, that you are destined to serve, to obey, to submit without resistance. But listen carefully, for this is one of the greatest illusions ever crafted in the history of mankind. Power is never absolute. Not for kings, not for tyrants, not for emperors, not even for the modern masters who hide behind titles, wealth, and influence. Their power rests on a fragile foundation, one so delicate that the moment you refuse to give it shape, it collapses. Look at history. Rulers who seemed untouchable, Caesars, pharaohs, emperors, were brought down not by divine wrath, not even always by armies, but by the quiet rebellion of the people who stopped believing in their authority. A throne is powerful only so long as the subjects kneel before it. The instant men decide to rise, the throne is nothing but a decorated chair. You must understand this power depends not on the will of the ruler, but on the obedience of the ruled. If you withdraw your consent, if you decide you will no longer be a piece in their game, their dominance crumbles. This is why leaders cling so desperately to fear and illusion. They know that without your belief in their control, they are nothing. Consider the prisoner who obeys his captor. The captor seems strong, dominant, unshakable. But in truth, the chains that hold the prisoner are not only made of iron, they are made of the prisoner's acceptance. The moment the prisoner is willing to risk escape, willing to defy punishment, the balance of power shifts. Suddenly, the captor must exert effort, must fight to maintain control, and the illusion of effortless dominance is broken. You see, no one can control you unless you allow yourself to be controlled. This truth is what terrifies those who claim authority. They fear rebellion more than invasion. They fear disobedience more than enemies. Because rebellion does not require armies. It requires individuals like you to stop kneeling. Once you recognize that power over you exists only because you recognize it, you begin to see how fragile their rule truly is. In your daily life, this same pattern repeats itself. The employer who believes he owns your time only has that power because you choose to stay in his service. The manipulative friend who demands your loyalty has power only because you crave his approval. Even in love, the person who thinks they control your emotions does so only because you hand them the keys. The illusion of power is sustained by your silent agreement. Withdraw that agreement, and suddenly they are powerless. This is the first cold truth you must accept. Power over you is a construction, a stage play where you have been cast as the obedient character. But you have the ability to step out of that role, to walk away from the stage, and to reveal that without your participation, the play cannot go on. It is not their crown, their wealth, or their threats that hold you. It is your own recognition of their authority. Once you strip that away, you will see how quickly the mighty lose their grip, and in that moment, you will realize that what you thought was control was never more than a shadow, and shadows vanish the moment you turn your gaze upon them. If you wish to understand why men are ruled, you must not look first at the power of kings or the commands of rulers. You must look inward, at the desires that burn within each human being. For here lies the true chain that binds most people. It is not the hand of the master, nor the sword of the tyrant that enslaves them. It is their own hunger for wealth, comfort, love, and approval that makes them bend their necks willingly. Control begins not with force, but with desire. And the man who cannot master what he craves will forever be the servant of those who can feed or starve his appetites. Think of the merchant who bows before a corrupt prince. Why does he do so? Because his heart is tied to the coins the prince controls. He craves riches, so he swallows insults, accepts humiliation, and offers obedience. The master of his desires is not himself, but gold. In the same way, the servant obeys his lord because he fears the pain of hunger and the misery of poverty. He may curse his chains, but his fear of losing his daily bread silences his rebellion. And what of the lover who chases affection at all costs? He becomes pliable, weak, willing to betray himself for a fleeting smile or a tender word. Do you see? These are not men who are ruled by others. They are men who are ruled by their own ungoverned desires. This is the secret manipulators have always known. They do not need to strike you down to rule you. They need only to discover what you cannot live without. Once they see the craving in your eyes, once they sense the weakness of your need, they hold you like a hawk gripping its prey. They dangle what you want, they threaten to take it away, and you will crawl to keep it. This is why rulers speak not only with commands but with promises. Promises of land, of reward, of comfort, of love. These promises enslave more effectively than chains ever could. But the man who governs his desires is untouchable. Imagine the one who does not chase wealth but uses it only as a tool, who sees comfort not as a necessity but as a passing luxury, who accepts that love is sweet but not essential to his survival. Such a man is immune to the bribes and seductions of those who would control him. Threaten him with poverty, and he shrugs. Tempt him with wealth, and he laughs. Offer him affection, and he accepts it with gratitude, but never with dependence. The manipulator finds no purchase in him. He is free because he needs so little. To master your desires does not mean to live without joy or ambition. It means to command them rather than be commanded by them. It means that your hunger does not drive you into the hands of another, but instead fuels your independence. When you can step back from your cravings and say, "I will not be ruled by this," you break the invisible leash that so many wear proudly around their necks. For those who crave, nothing absolutely cannot be owned. And this is the essence of freedom that terrifies rulers, masters, and manipulators alike. The man who governs himself cannot be governed by another. Among all the instruments of control, none is sharper, none is more effective than fear. Fear is the invisible chain that binds men more tightly than iron shackles. It does not need to be locked or forged, for it coils around the heart and strangles the will. The ruler, the commander, the manipulator, they know this secret well. They do not always need to strike you. They only need to remind you of what could happen if you disobey. And you, imagining the pain before it ever arrives, surrender before the battle even begins. Look at the subjects of a cruel tyrant. Many of them are not whipped, not imprisoned, not tortured. Yet they obey as if every moment of their life hangs by a thread. Why? Because fear of punishment is often more powerful than punishment itself. The threat of losing your position, your comfort, your life, or your honor compels obedience far more than the actual act of loss. Fear multiplies itself in the imagination, painting horrors so vivid that men shrink from even the thought of defiance. It is not the executioner's sword that rules, but the picture of the sword that the mind carries with it day and night. The tragedy is that fear is a phantom. It exists in the mind more than in reality. How many times have you dreaded an outcome, only to find it less terrible than you imagined? Yet in your dread, you wasted days, perhaps years, paralyzed under the illusion of destruction. The manipulator relies on this. He whispers of consequences, exaggerates losses, amplifies the dangers until you cage yourself without him lifting a finger. And once you cage yourself, you are the jailer of your own soul. But consider the man who confronts fear directly. He strips away its disguise and looks it in the face. Suddenly, the phantom shrinks. The tyrant's threat is revealed for what it is, mere words, dependent on your belief. Imagine a man who no longer fears losing wealth. How can you bribe him? Imagine one who accepts the possibility of pain. How can you intimidate him? Imagine a man who has made peace with death. What sword can frighten him? The man who conquers fear becomes a creature beyond control, for there is nothing left to threaten him with. History shows us this truth again and again. Revolutions are not born from men who are unafraid of pain. They are born from men who have decided that pain is no longer worse than submission. The soldier who charges into battle knowing he may die is more dangerous than the one clinging desperately to life. The citizen who decides that the humiliation of servitude is more terrible than the gallows becomes ungovernable. Fear loses its grip the moment you measure it against the greater cost of obedience. Even in the smallest matters of daily life, fear dictates your choices more than you realize. You do not speak your mind because you fear rejection. You do not leave a toxic alliance because you fear loneliness. You do not take risks because you fear failure. And yet, every time you bow to these fears, you give away a piece of your freedom. You obey not because someone commands you, but because fear whispers louder than your courage. To break the tyranny of fear, you must train your mind to embrace what you dread. Imagine it, accept it, walk through it in thought until it loses its terror. When you do this, you rob the manipulator of his sharpest weapon. Fear is only powerful when it is unexamined, but when you drag it into the light, you see it for what it truly is. A shadow, a trick, a story told to keep you obedient. And once that story no longer terrifies you, no master, no tyrant, no ruler has the power to bend your will. If fear is the sharpest chain, then dependency is the heaviest. Where fear paralyzes, dependency enslaves. It is dependency that rulers and manipulators cultivate most carefully, because once you rely on another for survival, for comfort, for validation, you have already surrendered the keys to your freedom. He who controls your bread controls your voice. He who feeds your hunger controls your obedience. And he who holds the source of your comfort holds the leash that binds you. Throughout history, every clever ruler has understood this principle. The ancient kings kept their people dependent not only on food, but on protection, on favor, on privileges that could be withdrawn at any moment. Bread was not just sustenance, it was control. Roman emperors provided bread and entertainment, not out of kindness, but to create a population that would never dare rebel as long as their dependencies were satisfied. Even today, the strategy remains unchanged. Leaders, employers, lovers, even so-called friends, they do not need to chain you. They only need to make you believe you cannot live without what they provide. Consider the man who works for a master he despises. Why does he not walk away? Because his family's survival, his wealth, his position, all depend on the master's favor. He is trapped not by iron but by need. Consider the woman who endures mistreatment from those around her because she fears being alone. She stays, not because she is chained, but because her heart depends on the affection she receives, even when it poisons her. Look also at the man who follows the herd, who imitates every opinion and belief of the crowd. Why? Because he depends on their approval, their validation, their acceptance. Dependency is the leash wrapped around his throat, and he will not remove it for fear of suffocating without their applause. This is why dependency is more dangerous than fear. Fear can be overcome with courage, but dependency sinks deep into your daily life until you believe it is natural, inevitable, and permanent. You forget that the one who supplies you with comfort does so not out of necessity, but because you have surrendered your independence. You hand them your strength, and in return, you beg for scraps. Yet there is another way. The man who builds himself into self-reliance cannot be owned. The one who learns to create wealth rather than beg for it, who disciplines his body and mind so he is not enslaved by every comfort, who knows how to walk alone without seeking validation. Such a man is free even in the presence of tyrants. The master who tries to control him finds no grip because he has nothing to hold hostage. Threaten to take away his comforts, and he endures. Threaten to strip away his approval, and he laughs. threaten to abandon him, and he walks forward alone. Dependency is a trap that thrives on your blindness. It convinces you that without others, you are nothing. But once you cultivate within yourself the ability to provide, to endure, and to stand independent, you sever the leash. You transform from prey to predator, from servant to sovereign. No ruler, no manipulator, no false friend can command a man who has learned to rely on his own strength more than he relies on theirs. The most dangerous form of control is not the one you can see, but the one you mistake for freedom. Chains made of iron can be broken, but chains disguised as choice often remain unchallenged. Masters, rulers, and manipulators understand that to keep you obedient, they must never let you feel fully enslaved. Instead, they craft illusions, granting you options that seem to empower you, while in reality those options serve only to keep you within their boundaries. You think yourself free because you choose, but in truth, you are only choosing between cages. Consider the servant who is told he may select his duties for the day. He feels empowered, for he can decide whether he will clean the halls or serve at the table. But does this make him free? No, for his life remains in service. The cage has not disappeared. It has simply been decorated with choice. A slave allowed to select which chain he will wear is still a slave. And yet, many people are satisfied with this illusion. They accept the crumbs of autonomy, never questioning the deeper structure that binds them. This is how societies are managed. The people are granted the appearance of freedom. A vote here, a preference there, a variety of distractions to choose from. They are told that their voices matter, that their choices define their destiny. But look closely, and you will see that the range of choices is carefully constructed, limited, and designed to ensure that no matter what is chosen, the power remains in the hands of those who crafted the options. This is the mask of freedom, and those who wear it proudly often mock the truly free man who sees through it. The same trick operates in personal life. A manipulative friend gives you two options, both designed to benefit him. A controlling partner tells you that you are free to decide, but makes it clear that choosing wrongly will cost you their affection. Even employers, rulers, and leaders use this tactic, offering freedom that keeps you bound to them. The clever master knows that if you feel you are choosing, you will not rebel. In truth, he has chosen for you long before you lift your hand to decide. The only way to escape this mask is to see through the illusion. You must ask, who created these choices? Who benefits from them? Are they designed to set me free, or to keep me within invisible walls? Once you begin to question, you see how narrow the path really is. You begin to realize that what you thought was independence was only carefully guided obedience. The prison has no locks, because the walls are built from your own belief that you are already free. True freedom does not come from choosing between cages. It comes from rejecting the cages altogether. It is the courage to step beyond the options handed to you and to craft your own path, even if it means walking alone. Most men cannot do this, for they are comfortable in the illusion. They prefer the safety of limited freedom to the uncertainty of genuine independence. But the one who tears away the mask, who refuses to be deceived by appearances, discovers a freedom that cannot be granted or taken away. He becomes untouchable, for he no longer mistakes chains for liberty, nor comfort for power. And in this clarity, he sees the world as it is, a stage filled with men wearing masks, bowing under illusions, while he walks unbound. There comes a point where the struggle against control is no longer about resisting others, but about transforming yourself into someone who cannot be touched, someone who exists beyond the reach of manipulation. This is the highest state of power, not to rule over others, not to dominate with armies or wealth, but to stand so complete within yourself that no threat, no promise, no illusion can bend your will. To be untouchable is not to escape the world, but to move through it as a fortress moves through a storm, unshaken, unbroken, feared and respected by all who approach. How does one arrive at such a state? It begins with mastery over the self. The man who has conquered his desires cannot be bribed, for he does not kneel before gold or affection. The man who has overcome his fear cannot be intimidated, for death, disgrace, and pain have already lost their terror. The man who has severed dependency cannot be commanded, for he draws his strength from within and does not clutch desperately at what others provide. This trinity, freedom from desire, fear, and dependency, creates an armor that no ruler can pierce. Without this armor, you remain vulnerable to the arrows of manipulation. With it, you become a fortress unto yourself. Consider how rulers select their targets. They prey upon the weak, the dependent, the fearful. They identify the cracks in a man's armor, his secret longing, his hidden terror, his crippling reliance, and they exploit it without mercy. But when they encounter a man who does not hunger to be fed, who does not tremble at threats, who does not rely on another for his survival, they are left powerless. Against such a man, even kings must tread carefully, for he cannot be swayed by the usual weapons of control. He is untouchable not because he hides, but because he cannot be bound. This untouchable man also carries another advantage: he turns the tables. While others are ruled by illusions, he sees the illusions for what they are and can wield them himself. He understands how fear chains the timid, how desire seduces the greedy, how dependency weakens the careless. He may use these tools strategically, but he himself remains immune to them. To be untouchable is not merely to defend oneself. It is to walk among men with the knowledge that their strings can be pulled, while yours remain beyond their reach. This is why such men often inspire both admiration and fear. People cannot control them, and in turn, they cannot help but respect them. But do not mistake untouchable for invincible. The untouchable man does not avoid hardship, he accepts it. He does not evade loss, he endures it. What makes him untouchable is not that the world spares him, but that the world cannot conquer him. His foundation is built upon principles, not possessions. His strength comes from discipline, not approval. He has prepared his mind and spirit for storms, so when they come, he does not collapse like the masses who clutch desperately at their fragile comforts. The path to becoming untouchable is not an easy one, for it demands that you strip away illusions you have clung to your entire life. It requires you to face hunger, to face fear, to face loneliness without begging others to save you. It requires you to cultivate strength so deeply rooted that even when stripped of all you own, you remain sovereign. Few achieve this, for most prefer the safety of dependency, the comfort of illusions, the sweetness of submission. But those who rise above, those who harden themselves against the weapons of manipulation, discover a freedom so pure that it unsettles those who witness it. They are no longer subjects in the game of control. They are the players who cannot be captured. Conclusion: you have now seen the cold truth unveiled. The illusion of power over you, the desires that chain you, the fears that paralyze you, the dependencies that enslave you, the masks of freedom that deceive you, and finally, the transformation into one who is untouchable. Each of these truths exposes the same reality: no one truly holds dominion over you unless you hand it to them. The rulers of history, the tyrants of the present, the manipulators in your daily life, all of them thrive not on their strength, but on your surrender. To live beyond control is not to rebel blindly against every command, nor to despise authority for its own sake. It is to understand the game so completely that you are never a pawn upon the board. When you master your desires, you cannot be bribed. When you face your fears, you cannot be threatened. When you sever dependencies, you cannot be enslaved. When you see through illusions, you cannot be deceived. And when you embody the fortress of the untouchable man, you rise above the reach of every hand that seeks to pull your strings. Most will never take this path. They will remain content in cages disguised as comfort, chained by their cravings, guided by their fears, dependent upon others to survive. But for the few who dare, for those who choose to see, a greater destiny awaits. A life not of submission but of sovereignty, not of illusions but of clarity, not of servitude but of freedom. This is the cold truth I leave you with. No one can ever control you unless you allow them to. And once you withdraw that permission, you become something rare, something feared, something powerful. You become free.